All right, we'll call the meeting to order. The Skokie Public Library Board meeting Wednesday, December 13th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Welcome, everyone. Any comments from observers? Susie, anything you received?
No, there aren't.
All right, then we'll move on to the minutes. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of November 15th. Let's start with that. Any comments, edits, corrections to the minutes of November 15th? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from last month's regular meeting?
So moved.
Second. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. On to the minutes of the special meeting of November 21st, which was the dedication of the Carolyn and Anthony Business and Community Center. Any comments or corrections to those minutes? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those pass unanimously. All right. I'm going to skip over the closed session. We have to go into closed session tonight, so I'd rather do the closed minute meetings in closed session. In case somebody has a question about it, we can talk about it in closed session. It defeats the purpose to talk about it in open session. So, but let's move on to the approval of destruction of audio recordings of closed session minutes. So again, we're required to keep audio recordings of our closed sessions for a certain amount of months, and then after which we can destroy them. So these have all reached their maturation date. Any discussion, questions about that? Can I have a motion to approve the destruction of audio recording of the closed minute sessions, the dates that are listed from February 9th through June 14th?
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you for getting us through that. Richard, Director's Report.
Thank you, Gene. Good evening, everyone. So the first thing on my report is our third floor renovation update. So good news, everything is still going well. We're 2.5 months into the project and we're on schedule. Laura and I visited, we usually visit every once a week at least, and we visited earlier this weekend. Saw a lot of progress up there. The drywall is up. They're starting to really get into the next phase. Soon we'll be seeing a lot more progress with the ceiling grid and then painting, and so we're kind of reaching the midpoint here. So it's looking good. If the board would like to do a little walk around after towards the end of the meeting, we still have to be in session first, but I'm happy to do that here today, or can also do that in January, whatever the board wants. So,
Can we let you know at the end of the closed session?
sure, yeah, of course. Good point. So I just want to mention that I had the pleasure of visiting NBC Sunday School. Was it 2 weekends ago, I believe, and Shabnam and Syed were kind enough to invite me and a couple of my colleagues, Lori and Maria, and we really had a really wonderful time there. Just struck by how warm and welcoming everyone was to the library staff, and gave out a lot of books and we had a lot of connections, and hopefully this is something that we can do on the regular in some way. So thank you, Sheldon. We had Blue Point training on Friday and it went really well. The system works, thankfully. We live tested it too, so the relays to the police dispatch worked, and they confirmed that they got the message. And they didn't actually in the protocol for responding, but they confirmed that they received the message. We had a review of the protocol for how to respond and what to do during a situation where there might be an active weapons threat. And then we actually turned on the Blue Point system to allow people to hear and see kind of what might happen when that is someone goes to station. So we have plans to turn everything on Tuesday next week. So we're still kind of tweaking a few things in terms of like making sure the people who weren't able to make the training get a basic level of understanding of what the system is. We don't want anyone to be informed about that, so we want to make sure that we finish that training before we turn it on, but we believe that we'll be able to do that by Tuesday. And we want to add some speakers and maybe a couple of different strobe lights at some point. But that's something that can come later. Laura and our IT manager and our safety manager are all assessing that currently, prioritizing, kind of creating a prioritized list and getting things for that. So, but the system worked as it should, and I'm looking forward to just finally have it turned on. I appreciate everyone's patience with the long process of installation, but we really wanted to get this right as much as we could at least. So
Where's the nearest, like, I'm just thinking of when we walk around later possibly, where's the nearest pull station here? I just kind of want to see what one actually looks
I can
like.
show
in
you.
the library. I would like to see that.
sure,
Yeah.
I can show you where they are.
I'm imagining it, but I'm like, I didn't know if there was one even in.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
most of them are in staff areas only because
Okay.
we didn't implement it in public
Okay.
accessible areas because the public isn't trained on the system.
Of course, okay,
Like they are with fire alarms and so.
Right.
okay. Yeah, that'd be great to see.
Sure, of course. Obviously, the ones on the third floor, when go up there, they won't be installed yet. Once the third floor project finishes, they'll come back and finish the installation for the third floor full stations.
And there's no added charge for them to come back later and finish
No,
that. That
that
was
is
all
all,
included.
it's all built into, what we're all. Just a minor note about a special guest at the library. It's like, it's not April Fools or anything. We had Amy Poehler, author, actor, producer, director. I'm sure I'm missing some.
Emmy winner?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
She visited with the production team. We knew that she was planning to visit. We had been in contact with her team and they were just interested in seeing our library. They heard from former executive director of Italy that we were one of the libraries that she recommended for her to visit during her, I guess, scouting trip, so we had a really pleasant visit with them and had a great conversation. Clearly, a lot of interest in libraries and a lot of knowledge about libraries, so it was really encouraging. And she was obviously impressed with the library. It was just a regular Wednesday morning, but she and her staff commented how we were the busiest library they've seen so far. So, and they just commented how well used the library is. So, yeah.
Do you have any indication about when they'd be making a decision on it, or?
Well, it's kind of a little not settled, but I think that early next year they might start kind of some early filming and I think it sounds like a process that might spend a good deal of time, so. But also, I just kind of keep in mind that these things might not come to fruition, and it was a pleasant visit anyway. It was kind of a fun thing for staff. So she walked around and actually engaged with a lot of staff members just to hear their stories and learn about what they did. So the chamber holiday party is not as exciting, but exciting. So I want to give that a good plug. If you are available, please join me tomorrow night at the DoubleTree Hotel. It's always actually, in all seriousness, it's a really good event. And it's been good food and just good company and a good time to network and meet people in the community. Everyone comes out for it. If you are free, even if it's for like 30 minutes, an hour, please let us know. We can get you quickly registered. So, I know Laura, Leah, Ali, maybe Laura's coming. Okay, yeah. Let's see. Jean and I and Amanda as well, we went to the ILA legislative breakfast. A number of staff were there, Amy, Laura, Jane Hanna, our communications and multimedia engagement manager. I thought it was a lovely event. We had it was pretty efficient, a lot of brief comments from the legislative staff and the local elected officials and from the some folks from ILA and I don't know, I hope everyone enjoyed their breakfast, but it was a good time just to connect with our local elected officials. Well, they weren't there, but their staff were there, so had a chance to connect with them. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There are some other items for self-explanatory.
Yeah, I think with the legislative meeting, it was good to get information. I was a little disappointed, the issue of publishers renting books to libraries.
Yeah.
Libraries pay so much more than the person on the street pays. And that was on the state agenda this year, but not on the federal. So I was talking to the representative who explained we're trying to go at it from a state consumer protection law point of view. We've lost some hearing at a federal level. Apparently Congress has indicated they're not particularly interested in taking on the publishers right now. So it's not even on the federal agenda, which doesn't bode well for any change in pricing soon. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I enjoyed it. I was very moved by the testimonies of a lot of the legislative representatives or their representatives. And it was the first time I had that experience, and it was just like one testimony after another about how powerful and important and central libraries are to community life. So I cry easily, and I was very moved by the whole experience and just seeing how committed the lobbyists were to these issues, and it was really eye-opening. So appreciate the chance to go.
We're fortunate in this area of the state, especially. So many of our libraries do a good job of connecting with their local reps. Like, those relationships are already there. That event is not creating those relationships.
Right.
It's just bringing them up.
Yeah. That's great.
Amy or you read that?
No, we covered it.
It was a good chance to network with other librarians too.
It was yeah, that's a good point, because it was the first time that it had been in person since 2018. So, yeah, you're right. It was like people that you haven't seen in 2 years in some cases.
All right, so we don't need to approve that. But any other questions or comments about director's report? If not, we'll move on to disbursement reports. So that's page 5 to page 13. Questions or comments about expenses and disbursements? If not, can I have a motion to approve the November 2023 disbursement report?
So moved.
Second.
We have to vote individually since it's money. Mary,
Yes.
Amanda?
Yeah.
Sheldon?
Yes.
Ella? Yeah. Yes, also, so that passes 5-0. Moving on to the approval of construction payout number 3, page 14. Pages after that. Questions about that? I know, Richard, you sent out a note about the page 17 and things being crossed out.
Hope that was clear. Josh clarified to me that a lot of this actually is more for Josh and our architects to have the details of all the, to make sure and double check, because they have both eyes sex advisor on it, and to make sure that everything's accurate. The sheet that really is important is the SMC summary sheet. That shows like what's due in this pay app, what's the remaining balance, what's the retainage. So just wanted to make that clear. Like everything else is really all the detailed sheets that the architects and SMC use to cross-check everything.
So it's really page 14 has the relevant number for current payment due.
That's right.
Any questions, comments? If not, can I have a motion to approve construction pay application number 3 at a total cost of $477,625.91?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
All right, all in favor, individual votes, Mary,
yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Shavon,
Yes.
Ella,
Yes.
that passes unanimously. We can move on to consent agenda, starting on page 31 through 45. Questions, comments about the data?
I just definitely wanted to talk through the library card cleanup, like, removing the, like, inactive patrons and
Yeah,
what that process was like, and then what we plan to do going forward, since it had been such a long time since we had cleaned up the database, and now seeing that the number has obviously dropped pretty significantly. Do we have any, like, marketing plans or anything else to really try to do some type of outreach to gain more active users of the library? So kind of a loaded question, but I think it's important to talk
We're
about.
prepared.
Okay, good.
Laura,
We're prepared.
They are prepared. Lauren McGrath, our deputy director, to speak on this, and then I want to just mention that Hudson, our data and web administrator, is here as well. Devin is the one person who creates all of our wonderful dashboards for the board packet, so they're here as well to help explain the process. I mean, so a lot of it is obviously on page 37 of the packet. I believe Devin prepared that to just give some insight into what happened. But Laura, Devin, do you want to say a little bit more?
Yeah, I can speak to the marketing piece and then we talk about the data piece. I have talked with our community and multimedia engagement manager about this. It's actually helpful to have cleaner data. It's more accurate. It allows us to better target specific areas. And she's already percolating some ideas as to how we can reach out and reach more people. Obviously, we have things ongoing like our new mailer postcards that go out to anyone who moves into Skokie. We have the school card campaign where we reach all the school children in Skokie. But thinking of other ways that we can reach out to more of the non-users. And she did want me to mention again that our newsletter goes to everyone in Skokie, whether or not they have a card. So we do have ways of reaching people beyond just you're in the building, telling you something. We're gonna leverage books like social media, maybe some mailings. She's got yeah.
One comment about why the cleanup is so beneficial for marketing campaigns like that. So the new mailer, the new mover mailer that goes out, I send a list of our current patrons to that vendor, and the mailer doesn't go to the people that are our current patrons. So all of that cleanup that we went through is gonna be really helpful to know if those are, inactive people that have moved. Yeah, I know we have the address verification, but it's, a lot of them were inactive for almost 20 years on there. So it was like, there was only 2006 on there. So it was like a really helpful opportunity for us to be able to actually target the people we need to target. Yeah. Trying to think of how to.
And then what's the plan going forward? Like, how often is it recommended to do data cleanup? I mean, at least in I do marketing for my job. So, obviously you go through lists fairly regularly, making sure. So what's the cadence that you guys are recommending to do going forward for cleanup?
So according to the IPLAR, our Illinois Public Library, thank you, annual report. It's 3 years of inactivity is usually when you'll purge a database. We haven't done that yet just due to some of our cardholder policies, but we are going to work our way there as we, streamline the process of cleaning up all of the. It had been a very long time, so I'm sure there's things that we missed. So we're gonna get to that 3-year mark.
By doing continuous,
Yeah.
so that we stand.
Laura, when you contact the school kids, is it for public and private schools?
Yeah, we reach out through the schools. We don't actually contact the individual children or family cardholders. We work with all of the school districts. And we do work with the private schools as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, the percentage of total cardholders who are active, that increased, right? Because,
Yeah.
Percentages, yeah.
yes, exactly. So, but it does, I mean, it's just cleaner and it just gives us more accurate information about who's engaged with us and.
And knowing that 61% of our cardholders have been active in the last year, that is a really high number. The people who have cards are using them. So if we can reach those who don't have cards and lock them in, they're likely to use us heavily as well.
What makes you say it's up? I wouldn't know what's this.
Compared to relative to the previous.
Yeah, yeah. And also it's almost 2/3 of our cardholders then have done something within the last year. And that doesn't count the people who come here to study and don't check anything out and don't use our online resources. So it's probably even higher than that. But yeah, it strikes me as just a much higher number than what we've seen
Do
before.
we have a benchmark we shoot for?
What is standard for that one?
So in the reports for like other Illinois libraries, most of it's a total card holder number. So I can't look at their data and split it up because it includes reciprocal borrowers. So like I could compare it to their population, but it's gonna be over 100% regardless. So that was the best that I could find for a lot of other libraries. But could be something we could reach out to people about.
And when you do outreach, is it pretty broad in scope where we just kind of talk about the overall services of the library? Or do we do any type of segmentation where we know like this particular like persona typically uses the library X, Y, and Z and reaching out to this person because they're similar, might engage in similar, you know, like, I don't know, is it broader or do we do any type of like specific communications or anything like that?
Most of it tends to be broader, but we have talked about doing more targeted things.
Okay.
Jane, our multimedia engagement manager, has talked about perhaps doing something around our bookmobile stops where we are just mailing people within a certain radius of a
Yes.
stop, or, you know, trying to target geographically like that. And we've done some of that in the past as well.
It's a great idea. And I know we do, I mean, it is a form of segmentation. We already do, you know, obviously with like the, I can't remember what it's called here, but where we reach out to parents who have young children, like that's a great example of reaching out with specific content that's really relevant to a specific group of people of interest in that. So I think that that's really good.
We have done some market segmentation work, with the consultancy in the past,
Okay,
maybe I wanna say 10 years ago and 10, yeah, you know, so it's been a while. I think that's some good. It's been a while since I looked at that information, but I was here when we listed and some good did come out of that, but as you probably know, like with a community like Skokie, in a 10-year span or 5-year span, the community is changing so
Yes.
much
Yeah.
that these broad generalizations of these segmentations based on the consumer data or whatever is not always like enough for us to really do that. So our philosophy has turned more into the community engagement work, you know, so
Okay.
like really focusing on our engagement with every element of our community so that we can have a really understand a grounding in what our community needs and wants.
and I think that's really relevant. I mean, in like market research speak, that's really, you know, more qualitative
Right.
and
Right.
kind of going out and actually understanding what are the services people need. I think best practice is always having a little bit of both.
Yeah,
But I think to your point, because we are so diverse and things are constantly changing, getting that constant feedback and being able to pivot and react to it and being able to reach out to everybody is a really good marketing
Yeah.
strategy. So I think that sounds
I
really good.
remember one, there was, you know, the market segment, labels are so kind of funny almost, you know,
Yes.
like Eastern
Coastal.
coastal, East Coaster or whatever, you know, and it would be like 35% of this census block is that group and they like playing golf and stuff. I don't know if that's really capturing Skokie. maybe like in a different community that's like accurate, but.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of, we didn't find it really, I should speak for myself, I didn't find it as compelling as kind of what we're doing now with the personal relationships and the engagement with community partners, really listening, so.
I also wanted to add, we've talked about potentially reaching out to those who haven't been active in the last year. Maybe they were last active 2.5 years ago and they're about to fall off our 3-year standard. So reaching out to them and saying, we missed you.
Yeah.
Let us tell you about some of the new things we're doing. So we're trying to approach it from a number of different angles.
I have a quick question. I don't know if Spokie's done this, but I've seen in other communities like signs and on lawns or in windows, like I love my local library. Have we done that here? Does that even work? I know that's like a whole thing with budgeting too, but
We have done that in the past, it was like 2007 or something, remember? Do you remember we had, what was it for summer reading or something, or?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I have a vague recollection of doing that many years ago, but that's something we could.
just in terms of like capturing the love of active users, people who are already like fan clubbing and signaling to neighbors and people who pass by, like, oh, I love my local library. Oh, wait, I don't know, like just thinking about like foot level, street level. I was in Indiana recently and saw people like shouting out their local library and I was like, oh, I want to see their local library. So just kind of that association, it might be fun to think about.
We can definitely look at that, I think it's a great idea. We were involved with with Skokie Welcomes Everyone.
Oh, yeah. I love
Years ago,
that. Yeah.
So that's the last time we really kind of ventured into the lawn sign world, but I like that idea. It's like kind of a compliment to like also our summer reading t-shirts everywhere, you know, it's like just
Yeah.
broadcasting.
And our tote bags, you see those
Right.
all over town.
You
Yeah.
have one, someone will stop you and every time I wear my shirt out and about, they're like, I love the library.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah,
Which is great.
but I like that idea, but once.
Yeah.
We can get local businesses to also participate in it.
I was excited to see, like, I don't think there's anything bad with purging. I'm excited to see that we've got a plan and I think it's really good because now it seems we have really solid understanding of everything and we can really help bring more people on to purging.
It's kind of akin to leading your collections.
Yeah.
Keep them fresh and accurate and know what you have, and you want your patrons to be able to see what you have. Cool.
Other questions or comments on the consent agenda? Matt, can I have a motion to approve consent agenda? Second, someone? Second. All in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving on to page 46, acceptance of the amended audit for fiscal year 2023, which is pages 46 to 56.
I hope my memo explained it sufficiently. You probably sensed at the last meeting that I wanted them to clarify something and they weren't really readily willing to offering that. So afterwards I had a conversation with Madison and I were kind of exchanging correspondence with them and they eventually acknowledged that what we were saying, and we did not overspend, we did not go over our budget. Our budget was actually reducing under our budget, as we always do. So I asked for them to formally amend the report, pull the report off the comptroller website, re-upload it, pending board approval of this amended audit. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them, but hopefully it's straightforward. They also amended the MD&A and the management letter as well. So we only included as attachments the relevant portions, and really what you will probably not, you won't notice anything different other than the absence of the notes about us being over budget. So.
Right, so on page 55 of our materials, that's the end of their 4 recommendations. Last month, there was a 5th one, where there was the finding that we had gone over budget. And it specifically in the recommendations that the board needed to investigate why we went over what we were doing, which is why we pressed them about how we do due diligence on that. So the good news is.
We investigate
Yeah.
it.
We didn't wait until next year. We did it the next day.
So that's no longer, we have fulfilled our obligation as far as I'm concerned.
That's right.
It's been addressed, so thank you, Richard. Thank you for taking care of it. All right. Do we need to approve this?
Yes.
My motion to accept amended audit for fiscal year 2023.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
since it's money, we'll vote individually. Mary,
yes,
Amanda, Shabnam,
Yes.
Ella,
Yes.
that passes again unanimously.
Thank you.
I think it's Alex, but it is Sylvia Berman.
That's,
Yeah.
Andrew. That's probably Andrew.
Then vote we wish to- people that-
I guess it's. You want. to do the-
Well, let's do the Lyra
Yeah,
insurance
it should be.
real quickly, page 57.
So, this
Good
is,
news financially.
yeah, hopefully this is really, clear. This is our annual insurance renewal. This is, just keep in mind, Lyra is for our business insurance, so cyber, property, liability, workers' comp, et cetera. So, as I mentioned in my memo, due to our recent appraisal, we actually have a slight reduction in our renewal rate. Whereas most of the numbers will actually experience just like 13% increase this year. So it's still a hard market for insurance. Next year, I wouldn't be surprised if we were experienced an increase, but this year, fortunately, we won't.
Questions or comments? Not motion to approve the Lyra insurance renewal will quote at a total annual cost of $120,870.66.
so moved,
Second.
All right, it's money. Mary,
yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Shabnam,
Yes.
Ella,
Yes.
and that passes unanimously.
you.
Thank you. Taking care of that. Good to be up ahead of that curve.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to discussion of the potential Petty Auditorium upgrade. Richard passed out some materials tonight is what Richard doing on this. We have some people on.
Yes, Andrew Berman, our architect, is online. I see. I don't know what, who else is online? Okay. We can get started here. I can introduce the topic. Hi, Andrew. How are you? So actually, I want to point out there's a little colorful, one video here running back, and Amy Kuster, our new Director of Public Services. Congratulations, Amy. Created this for you. It's a little nicer to look at than my grand memo, so. But I think my memo was fine too, so essentially, I wanted to bring up a discussion for the board. I already talked to Gene about this. I know it seems like maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but you know what, since we're already in the midst of our third floor renovation, but that is in motion, obviously, it's on schedule to be completed in April. I want to get a little ahead of ourselves in terms of like thinking it forward, and I want to project forward a little bit to the summer of next year and consider the possibility of a petty auditorium renovation. This is the last space, essentially, last public space in our building that hasn't been renovated. It requires an upgrade, honestly. If you've been in it recently, you probably noticed carpet stains, thinned out carpet, not enough handicap accessible space for wheelchairs, walkers, strollers, etc. The lighting is pretty, it can be improved. It's just nicely. The AV, we have issues with our AV, even just during this training that we had on Friday. giving us problems and it was just really difficult to work with. It was just not reliable. So there's more there, but that's kind of the highlights, I guess, or the lowlights, so to speak, of what needs to be improved. I wanted to have an exploration of what it might look like financially for us, because if it wasn't going to work in terms of our available funding, then we were just gonna kind of kick this can down the road to maybe next summer in 2025, but or following summer, I should say. But we worked with Andrew and his team, and also Josh Campanelli and his team at Gels Construction. Andrew also helped bring in Schuller Shook, the AV and lighting consultants who worked on our renovation projects up to this point. They've been great partners in helping us modernize our building. And they together helped put together the project budget sheet that you have in front of you. So it's one that says project budget on it. So this is not obviously the typical full-blown budget that you see with from Sheldon Construction, but it hopefully serves a purpose of giving you a basic idea of what the project total would be in the ballpark area of, right? So if you look at the construction costs, they're labeled here, and then the single phase, which is essentially doing it all in one shot in June, from June through August of next year, it would cost us just a little bit north of $900,000. If you broke it out into two different phases over 2 summers, we could possibly save a little bit of money the first year, but essentially we'll be paying a little bit more at the end of the whole project if we did it in 2 phases. I'm gonna pause here. I'm gonna go through some of the numbers that I provided you on a separate sheet, but maybe since we have Andrew and Alex, our other architect here, Andrew, can you speak to just your perspective on what you've seen in the Petty, what you think this project can bring in terms of enhancements to our community? Andrew and Alex have both spent a lot of time in the Petty, so they're familiar with this space.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. So Richard showed us the Petty at the very beginning of our involvement with the Skokie Public Library, and we've been in on a regular basis since then, always talking just at a very high level about what would be the strategic ways of bringing that space up to contemporary standards, up to the standards of the library, and therefore make it a much more usable, versatile space. And so what we've done so far along these lines is talked with Schuller Shook, the lighting consultant, and Schuller Shook has an in-house theatrical division who work on both the lighting and the technology that would go into a multi-purpose space such as the Petty. And we've also spoken extensively with Josh Campanella, SMC, about this, and just tried to kind of wrap our heads around how to do the least amount of work to get the most amount of transformation out of the space. And transformation is really about getting good use out of the space. It's not so much about aesthetic issues, but rather, I think primarily get the lighting of the space up to a good level that it's on a par with the rest of the library. So that to me, it would mean bright, with controls, so it could be dimmed. There could be different scenes for different uses. And then installing a modest amount of AV so that there could be a versatility of use by the library and a kind of ease of use of this technology so that it, the Petty could be used for many more things, for more times during the day and the week. And then some of the other parts of the transformation that would relate to lighting that we'd like to do is really improve the navigation lights within the Petty so that people would have an easier time coming in, navigating the steps. There's a kind of improvised step lighting in the library now that could be much improved for the patron experience and also to improve the quality of the kind of theatrical or movie experience, whatever it is that's happening in there. So really that's my general introduction. These are the things we're thinking about are very strategic. They're very actually easy to implement. They don't require a restructuring of the library. We're trying to use as much of what is there. Restructuring the Petty. And beyond that, I just would like to turn over to Alex, who can speak to the fine grain pricing to the extent that that's helpful.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Before I talk about pricing, I just wanted to add a couple of things. So in addition to the lighting and AV improvements, and we have Chris on the line, and he's part of the AV team at Schuler Shook. So we can also hand over to Chris shortly to speak in a little bit more detail about AV. But I just wanted to add that the plan would be to improve accessibility in the auditorium. So currently there is somewhat limited space for wheelchair seating. Part of the plan would be to extend, I'm going to share my screen. It's not allowed. I don't know if you're able to enable the screen sharing, but I can just describe the scope, which would be to extend out the top step at the auditorium. So here's a plan view of the auditorium, double doors, two pairs of double doors either side. And so this is where you enter the space, and we would be extending out this top step to provide a much more viable and spacious area for wheelchair seating. So that would be a significant improvement to the accessibility of the space. Here we are showing wheelchairs with companion seats side by side, and then showing another option with companion seats behind, which may allow some more additional, a higher number of wheelchairs. Right, and the first is the existing, and the second shows how it can push out to have, we can extend the platform, that level space, so that people can come into the Petty, and it'd be a large flat area for ADA access for anybody who would be more comfortable on the flat rather than stepping down. Richard, would you like me to talk about the cost, or should I hand over to Chris to talk about AV in some more detail?
I actually have some questions. So Richard, you said we haven't had enough handicap spaces. How often have we not had enough? Because we've never heard about this before. So how often have we not had enough wheelchair space, and how much more do we need?
I think Amy can best speak to this.
Yeah, so it was at its absolute peak in the probably year and a half before COVID, where we basically didn't have a concert in particular, where we didn't run out of seating in most movies as well. I'd say now we're usually towing the line of being over capacity, or asking the companions to be seated just slightly away from. Again, for a lot of the films, especially the weekday films that have an older adult audience, and a lot of our Sunday concert performances. So it can be hit or miss. There's been many an event where I have seen someone who would prefer to be on the platform, but is using their walker to like go down just one step, because that's where they'll be able to fit. So it's definitely something that we've
would benefit from, especially if we're able to like at least double the amount of accessible seating space we have.
That's my good. So what's our current capacity then? How many wheelchairs can we fit in now?
So at most right now, probably about 8. And that would be quite cozy with companions seated a little bit further away. So if that person using a wheelchair requires any other assistance, that's not ideal for them. So if we were able to
You're
double
saying
that.
we currently accommodate 8, and we've had programs where 8 wheelchair spaces weren't enough.
Correct, yes.
So how many would you estimate?
I'd love to be able to have at least 15, if not up to 20.
So Alex, with your drawings, how many wheelchairs, if we do what you were proposing, how many wheelchairs could we fit in then?
Alex, were you able to hear us? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Well, in this plan, we're showing 8, but Amy, I think it would be better to understand where you fit your 8 currently, because
Right.
we're showing 8 in an expanded zone. So maybe
Yeah, I think the way that we've historically and like Colleen's seen the program assistants support folks in coming in, it's closer than that, so it's a little more elbow to elbow. You can make a new friend. And not everyone has a companion with them as well. So there's a little bit of, like, I would envision in this having staggered for folks with wheelchairs as well. And it's not exclusively wheelchairs. There are a lot of folks who are perfectly capable of navigating on their own with a walker. They just can't do the stairs.
I just want to also comment, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, but on that drawing, it kind of shows people neatly in a linear alignment, but that whole section, like in the walk pathway between the 2 doors across the back end, I've often seen wheelchairs kind of scattered almost too deep so that it's blocking the pathway. So even if it's close to the number that we have now, like safely having those people in a extended platform and keeping more of a, the egress available for everyone to safely come in and out would be helpful. In my point of view,
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and because I'm in favor of doing it, but I want to get enough. And so if you're saying we need 15 to 20, and that's got 8, that's not enough. So we need to add more, and I assume that's going to change cost estimates as well.
Well, and I want to clarify accessible seating as opposed to speaking specifically about wheelchair
Yes.
access. So I think, I would need to get out my tape measure again and look at it with how much further the platform would extend. But I do think the extension that they're talking about with the amount of space that is there would accommodate about 20 folks who don't have, like 15 to 20 folks who have mobility issues.
if you imagine someone using a walker, they might be able to not be able to get down the steps to the other seating, but they could use their walker to get onto the flat platform, not necessarily where the people in the wheelchairs are shown, but in the other seating, and then they can fold up their walker or put it aside with their assistant so that, for their helpers, so that we can still accommodate people who need an accessible area, but not necessarily sitting in the wheelchair.
Would you consider like a ramp or anything like that too?
We've looked at a ramp situation, and Andrew and Alex can talk more about this, but they told us clearly that it's gonna be too
The
steep.
slope is
Yeah.
not right, okay. I just wanted to double, I know.
It's not possible,
double
yeah,
check. Okay.
that's what I've been told, that it's not possible in that space, unfortunately. That was our first option to make everything accessible. This is the kind of the best option that is in front of us to increase accessibility. So.
Is it not possible in our budget
No.
range, or because
Yeah.
not possible sounds a bit extreme? Is it not possible in the budget that we have? Like, would it be too cost prohibitive, or is it truly not possible?
Well, I guess I should rephrase.
Given-
It's, yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. Given the rake of the auditorium, it would not be possible to provide a compliant ADA ramp. It's too steep of a incline.
and in terms of possibilities, like, there's no other space to grow into, obviously, or expand, so.
Is there any way that you can adapt? Like if we're talking about the angles and the level of it, is there anything that we can be doing in order to modify that in order to make it possible for a ramp?
Andrew and Alex, did you hear that question?
Yes, I heard it. Yeah, the issue is that the four walls are established. The entry points are established, the stage is established, and to fit in a ramp that could take you from the entry point, which is higher, to the low point in front of the stage, really just not the space available to do that. And so the options are along the lines of what we're showing, which is to more or less double the amount of level floor area at the entry to the auditorium space, which would more or less double the amount of people with accessibility needs of space, or to even continue that, to just make more of the area at the upper level. I mean, it doesn't have to stop here. It could keep going, and there's more flat area at the top, but that would also start to reduce the overall quantity of people that could be in the house. So we're trying to balance a good proportion of gracefully accessed area for people with accessibility issues and enough tiered seating to be able to have still a good quantity of people in the auditorium.
So I don't want to belabor the point, but I think it would be nice, if possible, to see what that wish option was. Because we've seen people do the impossible in spaces before. I just think it's hard to make a decision about we should move with this if we haven't even looked at the other options. If we have explored those options and we say, we're coming back, this is gonna be a $6 million job, we would need to break down walls, we would need to add these things, it's just too cost prohibitive, time prohibitive, and the return on investment is not great. That's one thing. But in my mind, impossible is a strong word to say that something can't be done. We're not even getting an option to see what it would take to make it possible. Am I making sense to anyone? Okay. I understand what the folks online are saying. I'm sorry, I keep the name, what's his name? Andrew and Alec are saying, but, and maybe I watch too much, I am not in construction or architecture, but maybe I watch too much HGTV, but, there has to be a possibility out there, but what would that cost? What would be the time? What would be the investment, to make it possible?
I hear you,
Mhm.
I do, and I guess my response would be, we have been thinking about this project for years, since 2017. There's a reason why we held off even on this part of the building and the renovation. We weren't satisfied with, we were thinking about this whole time, right? And what I'm personally hearing from our architect who are trained art professionals in design and architecture and construction is that this is the best possible option for us. Is there like something that that may be unearthed if we continue to throw like money is no object kind of thinking into this? Possibly, I haven't really, pushed Andrew to think that way, but this kind of leads into my other part where money is an object of concern, and we do not have, at this point, a lot of funding to kind of really, do much more than what they're imagining, and
So
if
was
the
it
board-
investigated and a price quote given that we know for sure, for certain? This,
Well-
this is too cost prohibitive to try, because I haven't heard anything about, okay, if we decided to make it possible, this is gonna be $3 million additionally, or is it gonna be $100,000 additionally? I don't have anything to gauge it by, and although these conversations have been had since 2017, what quotes were given in 17, 18, 19, 20, 21?
Well, the
22?
quotes weren't given because there was no viable option presented to ask for them to quote out the project. So this is the first.
Yeah.
That we, worked with the construction manager and, the architect to actually build out a budget, because we didn't even start talking about the numbers until, recently, when we determined that this is the best way forward. But Andrew, please correct me if I'm wrong, like if it is worth exploring kind of like an open-ended kind of design question there, and we should pause on this, and maybe Ella's making a good point, that we should slow things down here.
Well, I think part of the issue here is certainly budget, what's available and what's reasonable to spend. But I think another issue is just what are the goals of a renovated Petty. And right now there's very limited accessible space into the Petty, but there is some. So you're at a decent point and you've been making the most of that accessible space. What we're proposing is, in a very modest renovation, doubling that amount of space. Now, if the goal is to make every area of the Petty accessible for somebody in a wheelchair, that's just absolutely not possible. And there aren't many theaters where that, I don't actually know of any theaters where that is the case. Theaters typically, and event spaces, I'm calling this a theater, it's not quite a theater, but sometimes it functions as a theater. But this auditorium space, like most auditorium spaces, have a combination of accessible areas and stepped areas, and the steps are not preclude accessibility. And so we're just trying to find here a good balance between accessible and usable, and trying to find a good balance between fitting enough people into the space so that you can house a good size audience and get a lot of versatility and flexibility out of the space. So if the question is, how do we make it fully accessible, we have to define what does that mean. But I know that we just can't make every position, every point within the space wheelchair accessible. We don't have nearly enough space to have ramps and platforms and landings and all that entails. Accessibility is a very circumscribed or defined category legally, and so we'd have to follow rules, and this space is not at all designed to really allow much flexibility here. So this is a long answer to say, I think what we're proposing is a good gain, a good improvement to allow more people with accessibility limitations to have good seats within the house. The question, of course, to the Skokie team is it the right number of people, or is it close enough to be, it might not be ideal, but is it close enough to actually address your day-to-day needs? And if it's really not,
me
I'm
clarify.
happy to keep going with testing and sharing those test fits so that we can absolutely quantify what I'm trying to describe.
So let me clarify, I'm not asking for a fully accessible theater. That's not the question. The question is, perhaps an additional 2 rows can have a ramp or something. Is there anything in between fully accessible and what you proposed that we could possibly look into to see if there could be increased accessibility, knowing our demographic in Skokie, and it's an aging community, and there are folks who may not be in wheelchairs. Again, it's not just about folks in wheelchairs, it's also about folks with limited mobility, folks with other things going on who find it difficult to go down steps. Is it possible to have possibly one landing where folks don't have to engage with a step and they can have a ramp or something? Is there a possibility to expand that back section that you have there, an additional row or something? I'm just asking if there's some other alternatives, because the 2 alternatives that I see, and again, I am not the expert in architecture or construction, but the 2 options I see are very, very similar. Is there a way to extend that even more? Because flexibility, if we make it accessible where there's this open space, we could always bring in chairs for folks who don't need it, but limiting the amount of accessibility we have for folks who need it, I always want to elevate the voices of those who are the most underrepresented in any community. So I can always grab a chair because I have the mobility to place in a space that is designated for people who have limited mobility. But people with limited mobility can't get into the spaces that I can all the time. So it's just something I want everyone to think about.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Mhm.
I'm not sure, what other board members have to say about this, but my reaction to what you just said, I appreciate that clarification. And, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew and Alex, I think we can bring to the board, like maybe 2 options of like one step beyond what we're showing today and see what that pricing looks like. I don't think that would be difficult. I imagine that wouldn't be difficult, would it, Andrew?
Oh, we can certainly run through some feasibility studies for incrementally increasing the amount of accessible area within the room. Absolutely. And we can do that. We can present it, and then you will have some concrete examples. And then if any of them seem like a real net gain, then we should be able to price those out. Absolutely.
I guess what I was suggesting is that because of, in my mind, I mentioned the tight timeline, if we want to tackle this in the summer. Is it possible, Andrew and Alex, if we plan out essentially 2 scenarios and budget out those 2 versions of the project and bring that to the board for a decision in January?
Yes.
I have another question. We're at full questions. I think, at least from what I'm seeing here, I think a lot of these things that are called out are really good with the enhanced AP. We're talking about enhanced accessibility. The question I want to ask is, have we also looked at, are there other enhancements that we might need to make? Like, for example, have we evaluated how easy it is for like emergency staff to come in if somebody has a medical, like, has that been evaluated? Or a lot of new school remodels, for example, that are happening, they're putting in extra precautions where there's a lot of groups of people to deal with active shooter situations and things like that. Like, do we need to consider any of those types of enhancements as well while we're doing this type of project?
I feel like, I'm not sure if this answers your question. To some of the things that we've done. So, in terms of access to the space, we not only have the public doors on the right and the left of the entrance to the audience seating area, but there's also access from the stage area at 2 different points. There's a back door And there's also a side door, where we have, an elevator lift essentially to make the stage accessible for performers. So that's something we did pre-pandemic even. In terms of, safety, we just did the active shooter, training, obviously, in the food point installation. We installed a speaker in the petty, we ordered it, it's being installed so that it will, if performances won't be interrupted by, there's a car in the parking lot with lights on or whatever, that kind of announcement, but for an emergency announcement like Blue
Like the
Queen.
tornado or something.
Right,
that was
then
happening.
actually the speakers would play the message, and there's also a strobe light that's installed inside the petty to alert people that there's a serious situation going on, so we've thought about, the people in the petty in terms of emergency situation, how will they get the message?
I was thinking, I don't know, I mean, I'm not a safety expert, but like you hear about having additional locks put in if you need to barricade a door or, things like that in an emergency situation, like, is, I don't know, if the auditorium has those added safety capabilities.
I'm not sure I follow like two
Like say
barricades.
there's an active shooter situation, for example, and the guidance is to shelter and stay in place, right? Like if you're in a classroom, don't they typically lock the door and lights are out and that type of thing? Like, do we have those types of?
Well, this is not a classroom setting, obviously.
No, it's not, I'm not an expert, but I don't know what, I guess what I'm saying is I don't know what the recommendation is for a theater type setting, and if we have the latest information, and if that's something that needs to be, it's more of a question.
Okay, so we can check with law enforcement.
That might be a good idea.
But what I think that they will confirm is what they told us all along for the entire building.
Okay,
The run, hide, fight protocol is what our safety plan is.
okay,
It's not shelter in place.
Okay.
That's a very specific thing to schools
okay.
where they are able to secure. Michelle, I'm looking at Michelle.
Yeah, I don't know.
Michelle's
if I
an expert
answered
on
the
this school.
question. Yeah,
Well, and it's also dependent on the different, that usually the, strategies are, in conjunction with the local law enforcement and the school district and their policies. It's also dependent on age, it's also dependent, so there's a lot of other factors when you talk about, emergency response. It's, typically a decision that's made, along with board policy districts, and what they're doing and what is advisable by the local law enforcement for the specific needs of that school or that district. So, in the same way that for the, a public space like the library, we're working in conjunction with the school police department, and their recommendations based on what they've seen that is particular to like, on space that we have, what we know about our building and, what the needs are for our population.
We also have Chris on the line to speak more about the AV benefits. If you want to hear about that as well, or.
Well, but I think people sold this. Yeah, sure. If Chris is on to answer it.
I just had a quick question / comment kind of going off of what Ella was saying, and forgive me if this has already been covered and I wasn't aware of it, but in terms of process and community input, was there a moment in the design process where we talked with wheelchair users and people who do have used the auditorium and have said, hey, I wish it could be X, Y, Z, like has that been part of the process, and is it too late? Like, because it sounds like between a ramp and doubling the platform, there might be a preference of like, well, if I can easily access it straight from the entrance, I'd rather do that than go down a scary ramp that's too steep. So I'm just wondering if there's any representation along the way, and I know that can also like open up a whole echo chamber of conversation, but I'm wondering if that was considered in the design.
Well, I just want to make one point clear about the ramp.
Okay.
That's actually not an option.
Right,
Yeah, From what I'm hearing from our.
Right, no, I get
But
that, but it may be preferable what Andrew's presenting, that there is like it sounds like doubling that
Right, a
platform
little more
space.
space or.
It may be that if you ask users who are coming in, they might be like, this is great, like, awesome, or they might be like, that's not enough. We really wish it was X, Y, Z. So I'm just, it's more of a meta question around like,
Process.
process question and like, and how do we, you know, without, because there's a timeline, I don't wanna take a steps back, but like, how do we weave that into a process?
I would say that we haven't, recently, had focus groups with,
Okay.
IB users, but Amy, told I'm looking at Colleen, people who have a wealth of experience
Yeah.
talking to the users of the petty
Yeah.
and across many years have accumulated, sense and knowledge of what the issues are in the petty, so. This is a unique space in that, as kind of Andrew alluded to, that we're not changing the structure of the petty, you know, like,
Right.
so when we were doing the renovation at, for the first and second floor, we had lots of conversations with patrons
Okay,
to understand how we should, reshape the spaces. The petty is what it is, you know, in terms of the walls. What we're talking about is the enhancement of what we know are the issues, like the lighting, the AV, accessibility. But I don't know, Amy, would you?
Yeah, and we have been having just informal conversations with folks who are attending or indicate they would like to attend, peek in, and then opt out, since about 2016. And I want to emphasize that across a lot of different types of ability and
Sure.
preferences. So it includes talking with, the participants and, aides for some of the adults with disabilities day programs that we partner with and come in once a month for movies. Families who have children with disabilities who have very specific needs for how much space they can have between others so that they can have like a little bit more of a sensory friendly environment. So a lot of that over the last, 7 years, just kind of accumulating those pieces and feeding them into the conversations with Andrew and Alex and thinking about all of the different ways and groups of folks who would be wanting to benefit from things in the auditorium and trying to see how can we accommodate as most with the most frequency. Yeah.
I wanted to add in, we're also trying to address some other types of disabilities as well, including the hearing loop. We have many people in our population who have a little bit of trouble hearing, and even the lighting, I myself, so the petty stage lights are the same vintage as me. And on last Friday, I was standing right near the stage and I couldn't read my own notes because it's so dim in there, and I can't do it. So trying to enhance the full experience, no matter what your barrier is, fully experience the things.
You mentioned hearing loop, but I had a technology question about that in terms of, my understanding is we'll have to be running it on blue under the carpet, et cetera, so that'll have some time, labor costs. Hearing loops seem like they're giving the old technology versus Bluetooth, which is wireless. And it was reminding me in the old days when internet, everybody was running T3 wires through the buildings and the walls in schools, and then everything went wireless. And now we've got hearing loops, which is wired, and Bluetooth, which is not. So how long do we think the hearing loop technology is going to be good if we're going to all the trouble to put that in, or what's the next wave of hearing technology? And I don't know the answer, but
Maybe Chris knows.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I would say first off, the misconception in the United States is that hearing loops were a new technology that came along to replace the wireless belt packs that are now being replaced by Bluetooth. The fact of the matter is that hearing loops are very old technology and have been in use in Europe for a very long time and have been the set standard. So I don't think anything is happening to hearing T-coil technology specifically, which is the piece within the hearing aid that allows someone to walk into a space and use the space without any additional equipment, without putting big gawky ear speakers over their ears that say, hello, I have hearing issues, things like that. I think in addition to a hearing loop, most certainly Bluetooth is becoming popular. A lot more hearing aids are being built with Bluetooth technology that allow users to access the system through their own smartphone and broadcast from that. So yes, is it a good and viable thing to look at Bluetooth in addition to a hearing loop? I would say yes. But I don't think one replaces the other.
Do these plans include Bluetooth options?
So we have put together a very loose range of costs based on our early assessment of the AV needs in the space, to give an idea of what we would propose in the space. Within that range, I think Bluetooth is certainly a lower cost item that could very easily slide into the range we've provided. And there are other things that might slide out once we step further into the design process. So the short answer is no, but I don't think it's a major concern to add that capability.
But, and you recommend it, from what I understand you saying.
I think it is a good accommodation if the purpose of this project is to accommodate various types of accessibility needs. I think it's certainly something to look at.
Thank you. Chris, while we have the floor, or other things you want to highlight or?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just very briefly step you through our assessment of the space and some of the reasoning behind the recommendations we proposed. So we experienced a number of issues with technology in the space, or opportunities for improvement, I would say. One certainly being accessibility and the ability to accommodate the hard of hearing in a better way. Another, we recognize that the loudspeaker system within the space is in a bit of a state of disrepair. There are a few different loudspeaker systems, some of which are missing components. There's a loudspeaker on the left side of the auditorium that's been removed, and what we're proposing is simplifying all of that to provide a better audio experience within the space that accommodates a variety of different performance types, including film. We recognize that the interface for controlling sound within the PETI is both a little cumbersome and difficult to understand and navigate easily, which makes it difficult to create a good listening experience for performances or presentations. But also the mixed position, the position from which the system is controlled, there's actually two locations, and neither of those locations is situated within the room. One is up in the projection booth, so sort of tucked away with limited visibility and limited hearing into the space. And the other is from a control panel on stage, where individuals aren't hearing what's happening in the room. So we've proposed measures to fix that in a number of ways. Additional equipment to allow that wireless connection to that equipment, to allow an iPad to operate the system from within the room. And there is discussion about, well, if this platform is being built out for accessibility, I don't think it's the right thing to design in a fixed audio mix position like you would see in some other performance spaces or auditoria, but to allow the connection of a mixing console or something like that, a mix position, a control position from that platform would be a good additional feature set, so that when you do have larger music performances or cultural festivals or whatever might be the case, you've got that ability to provide a better audio mix, better audio into the space. One other thing that we heard was that the projection system doesn't accommodate, it can't be used with performance, since the current projection system is situated right over the center of the stage. Obviously that screen needs to be out of the way if a performance is happening on stage. And so we proposed, in our initial plan, this was proposed as an alternate to add additional left-right screens so that video and multimedia could be used in a while performances are ongoing on stage. We also recognize that a very common feature set, a set of feature sets that's very common in spaces like this these days, the ability to record, archive, web conference to bring others in. Speaking about accessibility, there is a certain population that maybe can't make it into the space, or you have lecturers or presenters that you want to bring into the space that aren't able to travel. So to provide that higher level of accessibility there could be accommodated through the ability to web conference, record, things like that. And then lastly, just looking at the overall equipment, I generally say that AV equipment has a shelf life of 7 to 10 years. And I qualify that by saying that that doesn't mean that every 7 to 10 years you should rip out your entire system and replace it. It means that at that period of time, you will start to see failures in equipment. You'll start to see pieces of equipment become discontinued, and their direct replacements are difficult to obtain if something should go wrong. And so the impact of small issues or pieces of equipment failing becomes greater and greater, and the likelihood of those failures becomes greater and greater beyond that period of time. And I think that's certainly true in the PETI. So they're included in this plan as the replacement of some outdated equipment to sort of extend the life of the system in that space.
Questions for Chris? Good questions? I know we don't need to vote on this tonight.
No.
I would say from the discussion, pretty clear the board's interested in pursuing upgrading the PETI. And Allison thinks we can afford it. I don't know if these discussions, if you're coming back to us next month, if that's gonna change the numbers or not. It sounds like if we want alternatives, it sounds like that would also increase the cost estimate, so yes, we're interested. We have to see what the numbers look like.
I think it's exciting, and I'm impressed by all the work that's gone into it and all the research, and it sounds very clear that there are great needs and a wide range of needs, so I'm excited to see where.
Just to know, we don't have to dive into the financial picture. I can spend like further, now that I know that the board wants to hear more.
Yeah, next.
But just one note that we wouldn't have even brought this to this stage if during our prep we realized the money wasn't there. So long story short, Allison and I spent a lot of time looking over these numbers, and I feel that there's a potential to cut funding there in our reserve fund, pending a transfer at the end of the fiscal year to fund this entire project outright. But we're also working on some possible other avenues to get some grant funding if possible. A lot of that is the nature of that is that we might not know, if that funding is going to be given and received by the time this project needs to take place. Some of that stuff that takes a year, to get the money in hand. So, but we're exploring everything that we can in order to make sure that we do all of due diligence in terms of searching for money through this project. So I'm pretty confident, given our analysis so far, that unless this project just totally balloons into like something massive beyond what we've shown, that we can piece together the funding and maintain the reserve fund at a level of that covers 5 months operating, as well as maintaining a very healthy general operating fund balance. So just to let you know.
Can I ask one more quick
Sure.
question? Maybe this isn't the right time, but I'm sure you've all thought about this very carefully, but like, if it happens over one summer, how, are there contingency plans for programming, or does programming quiet down, or like what? Do you rent out of space? I'm sure you've thought about this a lot.
Why the summer,
Yeah,
I mean?
well, and I deeply appreciate that you asked that question. You see how vital everything is.
Yeah.
Yes, so, when we got to the point of looking more seriously at it in the coming fiscal year, I worked with some of our program staff to look at what are the highest use times, in particular for library-led programs, but also things with some of our partners like the Village, information that we just wouldn't want to keep people from. And so actually, June through August is some of the lighter time especially for a lot of our cultural performances and programming. There are certainly a handful of things that we would connect with, like community partners or like staff in the building to look at alternatives for this coming summer. But we are really excited that then when we have the debut new space, our possibilities just soar. So summer is the least disruptive time
There's
for
also
busy.
availability of outdoor spaces.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yes.
What about and Laura mentioned this point, which is, I thought was really helpful to me in our planning. About why would it be good to span two summers? That's just doubly disruptive, right?
Yeah, I pointed out, explain to our patients, well, it's gonna be closed this summer, and also next summer. It's better to just do it all at once, do the whole thing, and then you're up and running, and you
Yeah.
you don't have to have another stoppage.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We'll bring back, what I'm hearing is that from the board, and I'll work with Gina on this too, of course, but we're preparing something for the board to consider in January. We'll do our best to consider other models and designs, bring the full budget costs and the fees proposals to the board. And if it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, we will adjust, our planning and be flexible.
And I think, along those lines, with more of the up-to-date, technology that we're using, especially to accommodate, so kind of touching back to what are the up and coming advancements in technology for, those disabilities.
Yeah.
Be half a step ahead.
Right, we don't want to be outdated and behind the day we open the space. So, well, I think it's great that Chris was here to hear all that and hear the genuine concern and commitment to accessibility and inclusion from our board and our library. So I'm sure he's factoring all that in already. What we're doing. So, and Andrew and Alice as well, but it's good that they were all able to join us tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Andrew.
On that gets us to closed session. What I would like to do is motion to go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 C1 and C21 to discuss the approval of payment of health insurance for one library employee and review closed minutes. Make a motion to do that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are going into